Earlier, I spoke with Iowa U.S. Senator, Chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee and President Pro Temp of the United States Senate, Chuck Grassley. Senator, nice to see you, sir.
Glad to be with you. Thank you for having me, Greta.
Senator, you had some very important hearings today, and how in the world did the United States get so dependent on other countries as part of the supply chain for medications and drugs?
Well, because I suppose you'd have to ask each individual country or company, but I figure that they're selling in such bulk to a government agency as opposed to individual consumers like in America, where we have more of a free market system, and they negotiate on a big quantity basis, and they get prices down, and the companies make a little bit of profit, but I don't imagine much. So then they get their money from the American consumer. And they argue that they need that money for research. But whether you're dealing with the subject you want to talk to me about, PBMs, or whether you're dealing with what the president suggested yesterday or a couple of other ways of doing it, the idea is, why should the American consumer pay for most of the research for miracle drugs? Even if we could do all the research, it seems like other countries, particularly the wealthy countries of Europe, as an example, ought to kick into that research by paying higher prices for their drugs over there, and that can replace money that if we had cheaper drugs in the United States.
You mentioned PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. Explain to me why we need them.
Yeah. Well, we had some people in our hearing today in the Judiciary Committee that said, why do we need them? They asked the same question. I think they were supposed to facilitate the contacts between consumers, particularly big companies that furnish drugs for their employees through their healthcare system, and the pharmaceutical companies. But now they have become so strong. They're the middle people between the drug companies and the consumer. And they decide prices. They decide rebates. They decide formularies. And what we're talking about for reforming PBMs is nobody knows what they do. They're an entirely opaque operation. And we don't know whether they help the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical companies, the PBMs themselves, the local pharmacists, or the consumer. And they ought to at least be helping the consumer. Now, I'm sure they're going to tell us, as we heard today in my committee, that they're helping the consumer, but we just don't know because nothing is transparent. And we need transparency because transparency brings accountability.
Who pays them?
They get paid by negotiating for the companies that they negotiate. They get paid that way, but they're also in this business. Can you believe it? They have their own mail order dispensary for pharmaceuticals, as one example. So you know, they not only sell and make deals and negotiate, but they're also in the business. We don't know how much they make, and as you told you, I don't know through this whole chain who benefits from it, and that's why we need transparency. I think transparency is going to drive down drug prices when we find out where this money goes, and if transparency doesn't do it through our PBM reform bills, then we'll take further action later on. But I'm a firm believer that if we get this stuff out in the public, and you know how the deals are made and who's making the money, we're going to have cheaper drugs.
Do they have the ability, for instance, of take an antibiotic? They can set the price for the antibiotic. So if they set it particularly high, do they get a piece of the action? I mean, it's I can't figure out if they get to set the prices. You know, what's the incentive to keep the price low, or what's the incentive to keep it high?
Yeah. Well, here's what one of the witnesses we had in our committee today, speaking for the PBMs, said that only the pharmaceutical companies set the price. But we think that there's a relationship between the pharmaceutical companies and the PBMs where one jacks up a price and the other one benefits from it, and you have this ratchet effect on drug pricing, and it ends up hurting the consumer.
Well, it's a very important hearing today, and I look forward to see what kind of reform, because I know that people are paying a lot of money for medication. And as we saw yesterday from the president's executive order, what he's trying to do, we've seen the negotiation of prices, but PBMs is also something I think is very important to look at. So thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you. Goodbye.